So I'm using Quilters Creative Touch version 5 and on a baby lock crown jewel machine. This is my machine. And I learned something new this week. Previously, I was bringing my machine and marking off every section that I wanted to sew, like this triangle, for instance. And then I would stitch out the triangle, pull the bobbin, move my machine, and sew this area, and so forth. Well, because I have the gold version, I used the marking tool and multi-placement to stitch this entire width at once. And I'll show you on my screen, see how I've defined it? So the first thing I did was I went into plugins and I selected marking tool, and then I came to my quilt and I defined all of the areas I wanted to mark. So like for here, I put my machine right here, and notice that I put my needle right over the edge, or right over where I want to mark. And sometimes I even lower my needle a little bit. So you get your needle where you want to mark, and then on the software you select add, okay? And then I'm going to move my needle to the next mark and press add. This one's already on there, so it's not really showing on my screen. Let me come right here to show you what I'm talking about. So right here I would press add, and what I've done is come over to another triangle. Now I'm going to go up to the top of that triangle. I'm going to select add, and then I'm going to go down here, select add. That's one that's already done too. So let's go this way, down to this triangle, add, there we go, and another add. So you just keep doing that. These markings will not stitch out, the ones in brown. They're just there to help me place my designs. So the first design I placed were all of the triangles, and now I've just placed this octagon design. So I'll show you how I do that. Once you place it one time, and over on the right, you have to have multi-placement selected, okay? To get these markings here, okay? So you'll see that on your screen. The first thing you do is select pattern, and then it asks you, do you want to place this pattern again? Yes. So now it brings the pattern to the middle. So now on my machine, I would come over to where I want to place it. Now I cannot place an octagon, but I've got it set to place as 4 points. So I put my needle in the top corner of this whole block, okay? And then I'm going to select the left block. That's where I want that. And then I'll move my machine over to the right of the block. I'm going to select right. I come down to the bottom, and I'm selecting bottom right. And then I'm going to select bottom left. And I'm going to go way out just to show you what happens. Now, can you see these? You can see where my design is trying to come outside. That's not showing very well. Let me go to the top right corner and show you what I'm trying to say. Now, see how my design is outside of the marking? So I just move my machine in until I get it to a point where my design is now within that brown marking. And I did that for every single one of these designs. Now the only trouble I had was laying out this design here, because it is an oval type design. And so I developed a little paper, because you could see that I wanted to stitch here. Well, I couldn't say to stitch the start point and the end point, because on this particular design the start and end point were at the same place. So I figured out if I drew an imaginary rectangle here what that would look like, and I cut it out of a piece of paper. And then I drew my center and my center. So then I just lay it, when it comes time to place this one, I lay it over that space where I want to stitch that oval design. And then I pin it in place, which is going to be hard for me because I'm holding the camera, so I'm just going to do this. So then on my machine, I've placed all of these, and now I want to select pattern, and it asks, do I want to place this pattern again? No. I'm done with those. I now want to place one of these. So you come up here to select pattern and navigate to wherever your pattern is, and this is where mine is. Open or double tap it, either one works. Okay, I don't know why that came up. You can kind of see my pattern in the background there, but you'll see as I lay it out. So now I'm coming over to my paper, and I'm going to put my machine in the top right corner of this paper, like that. And then on my pattern, I would do the top right, and then I'd move it over, and I'm just using the paper again as a guide. This is my top left, so this would be my top left, and then I move it down to my bottom left, and then over to my bottom right. And this is where that design is going to stitch. Now, if I was too far over and any part of this design was coming outside of my marks, I would just change these marks to make it fit. Because when you are in multi-placement, you cannot use fabric compensation, which is another gold feature. And I also neglected to say that to get to this screen here, I had selected on my opening screen, select and sew. This option does not work under pantographs, so you just select and sew, and then this screen will come up. And the first thing is to mark all of your placements, place your designs, okay? And then you're going to select quilt. And now this is what is going to quilt. All of the blue dots are jump stitches, and that's fine because what it's going to do is start here, stitch this design, and then it's going to jump to here and stitch this triangle, and then jump to here and stitch, and so forth. But it will stitch my whole design all the way to the end. And I just stood here and watched it. Actually, I went and watched TV. But then when you're done, you will have these long jump stitches to deal with. But that's a whole lot better than the time it takes to stop and place everything. So then once that was done, I go back. I'm going to remove all of this because I would have said finished, remove all, and remove all the patterns. Okay, because the next thing I wanted to do was in these oval areas, when this quilt is done, it creates a second pattern of an oval. So what I want to do is stitch in the ditch along this oval area. Well, because of my safe area is too short, I have to do this one half at a time. So what I did was I bring my machine here, and I'm going to select marking tool. You can also select the marking tool from over here. But so I'm selecting marking tool. I'm going to add my first mark where my machine is, and then I just move my needle down to about where I want it to bend, and I add, and I move to the next spot and add. You can see it's defining on here. Add, and add. Now, I want to stitch this out, but I don't want to stitch any patterns on the screen. So come over here and unselect multi-placement. Okay, right now pattern is selected. There's a pattern on my screen. You have to have one up here for the screen to work, but I don't want that to stitch, so I'm going to click that so that it will go away. The only thing I want to stitch are these markings. Pretty easy, just select markings, select quilt, and now you see what's going to stitch. So I bring my machine over to where I want it to stitch, here, and then I'm going to say pull bobbin, and now my machine is going to take a stitch and move out of the way, at which time I will pull the bobbin up. Now it's going to move back. And I had clicked the sew screen. I clicked it too many times, so that's why it's doing this, but it'll go back. It's hard to hold this phone and talk and do all this at the same time. So once you pull your bobbin, of course, you move back. My bobbin is up, and I can bury these or knot those off later. Now I'm just going to select sew. It's going to take a few micro stitches, of course. And then it's going to just sew out that outline. And this is a great way to stitch an outline of something that's an odd shape that you don't want to do manually. I have a lot of trouble stitching diagonal lines or curves and getting them to be straight. So this was pretty precise. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you like the video, please hit like and subscribe, and you would get notification of any future videos that I post for this software. Thank you.